Welcome everyone, my name is Mustafa, otherwise known as Chris, and welcome to some more Thunder. Now today I want to talk about the Russian tech tree. Now I think I've kind of touched on this topic before, I can't quite remember, but I just want to talk about the Russian tech tree and how it works in comparison to the other tech trees within the game. Now Gaijin, who are the company who make War Thunder, just before I start all of this, the idea is they're trying to make the game historically accurate. So if you get an aircraft if an aircraft is put into the game, what they try to do is make the flight model as realistically accurate as its historical companion, like the way it would have been in real life. And I think that's pretty cool. But what that means is that there are obviously going to be some balancing issues, and there's some serious balancing issues in this game. Now the Russian tech tree is a great example of how these balancing issues don't really get ironed out too often. Now Gaijin are trying to do their best to work on these things, but the problem is where they want to make the aircraft historically accurate, they kind of limit themselves as to how much they can balance the game. Because in games like Battlefield or Call of Duty, for example, where you can just dumb down some of the statistics of a gun. It doesn't necessarily have to be that realistic. So it doesn't really matter. You can add a bit of recoil, you can take away a bit of fire rate, whatever you want to do, you can pretty much do it. Excuse me. You can do it when it comes to weapons, but when it comes to a game company that want to make their game historically accurate, they've limited themselves in terms of they can't make the guns have more recoil or change the aircraft too much because it will make it unrealistic, which is kind of what they really want to make this game as like close to real life as it possibly can get. Except for actually being there in terms of the way the aircraft perform. Now obviously I'm playing Arcade Battle in the battle you're seeing at the moment, and in Arcade Battle the flight models are changed a little bit to make it a little bit easier for people who just want to play the game. Now Arcade is also probably one of the most fun game modes because it's just wacky. There's lots of aircraft and blowing each other up, and you don't really have to be too careful because you got more planes if you die. That's kind of what makes arcade fun. But anyway, back to the Russian tech tree. So the reason the Russian tech tree is used so often in balancing examples in this game is because it hasn't got the most aircraft. I think the Germans hold that title of having the most aircraft in their nation, but Russia definitely come close to it. Now the difference between the Germans and the Russians is that the Germans they have a lot of fighters. They've got a lot of Bf-109s, a couple of Focke-Wulfs, and I think that's about it. They got a couple of other things earlier on in the ranks, but for the most part, it's just the same variant. There's like different variants, of the same aircraft, which is the Bf-109. And that's the same for their attackers, not the Me-14s, the Bf-110. Sorry. And then you got the Me-410 and the Ju-87 and the 88, and the DOs. I think they're called the last one, DOs. I'm not really sure, but yeah. You basically just get variations of the same aircraft, which is how the German tech tree goes. Whereas the Russian tech tree, you get variations of the aircraft, but they're like different models. So you get, like, for example, the Yak-7B, the Yak-1, the Yak-9T, the Yak-3. They all look similar in their own rights. They're quite similar to each other, but they're all very different in their own rights too, like in terms of flight model. So the Russian tech tree gets quite a lot of variety. Also, the thing about the Russian tech tree is that it has a lot of fighters, a lot of bombers, and a lot of attackers, and it's got very good ones in all three categories. So it's not very limited in terms of using the Russian tech tree. It's definitely the easiest air force to use. Personally, Japan are my favourite air force at this stage in time, but I have used the Russians a lot, and the thing is, whenever I use the Russians, I find because they're so easy to use, you definitely get a lot of kills, pretty much every single match guaranteed. Now this is like an outlier match. This is one of those really good matches that you get here and there, but for the most part I generally get about 7 to 8 kills per match whenever I use the Russians, whereas when I use other nations it's a little bit less than that, and a little bit less regular as well. So you don't necessarily get like 7 or 8 kills every single match. You might get like 5 or 6, and then that'll be that. And that's the thing about the Russians. They're just very, very easy to use. And the balancing issue that Gaijin have got at the moment is the reason they're so easy to use is because it's got aircraft in the game at certain levels, with other aircraft at certain levels, but the other aircraft that are at the same level of the aircraft, the Russian aircraft, sorry, just don't really compete. An example is the Shaika, which is the aircraft I'm just about to use. Now, the Shaika is a level 1 aircraft with 4 7.60mm machine guns, and they fire at an extremely high fire rate, as you're going to see in a moment. And because the weapons are nose-mounted, there's not much deviation from the crosshair. It will fire in a straight line, whereas if you used to have the weapons in the wing, obviously they're going to fire around that reticle, not into the reticle, which is realistic. But the thing you got to remember is this Shaika is going up against stuff like Nimrods. You got the Nimrods and the Furies, and the Gladiators, which is the British aircraft. You got the Ki-10 and the A5M4, which is the Japanese aircraft. You got the Falco and the HE-51s, that's Germans, and then as the Americans, you got the F2A. And the Pea shooters. Now, none of those aircraft really compete with the Shaika. The Shaika is so damn powerful. As you can see here, well, you can't really hear it because I've had to turn the volume down because I was playing with a friend in this match, so his commentary will be there. But basically, the Shaika is so powerful because of its fire rate. And its fire rate kind of makes it, as I like to call it sometimes, a laser cannon. This thing it spews out so many bullets that an enemy aircraft just gets littered with them. It's like a rain of bullets. And it's not really until like level 5 or 6 that aircraft start to really be able to compete with the Shaika. Now, I'm not saying that the Shaika is the be-all and end-all in all of the ranks up until that point, but there aren't many aircraft which really compete with it. Or at least it can compete with them very easily. It's probably a better way of putting it. Now, I've used the Shaika in against level 10 aircraft. I'm level 9 in the Russian tech tree, but sometimes the matchmaking puts you up against aircraft that are a higher level than you. And I've been up against level 10s, and the Shaika still works. I don't feel at a disadvantage by using it. Well, I do obviously in terms of speed, but other than that, I can still take out a lot of the higher level aircraft. It's not hard. And that's the thing. You shouldn't be able to jump into a really high level match with something like this and be able to use it so effectively, because that just shows that the lower ranks, this aircraft just dominates everything in its path. It's like Khan from Star Trek. It's just so much better than everything else. And that was a bit of a random analogy. If you've seen the recent Star Trek film, you're not what I'm talking about though. But yeah. That's just, the Shaika is very powerful, and this isn't a trend that changes. If you go to level 2, you got the Ishak. Now the Ishak again is a very powerful aircraft. It's basically a Shaika but single winged, and it works just the same as a Shaika. It's got a very high fire rate. Only the Ishak is faster, slightly less manoeuvrable. But the Ishak performs way better than most other things at its rank. It's only rank 2, bear in mind. And if you've got a Shaika, and you can get 2 Shaikas now, by the way. If you've got 2 Shaikas and an Ishak, but going up against stuff at that rank, there's nothing that competes with it, really. They will destroy everything in their path. And I've put this to the test. You're kind of seeing a little bit of that test, but I've put it to the test so many times, and every single time I go into a match, I know I'm a bit more experienced than the average player, but if I go up against these people, it's just their aircraft just can't compete with the Shaika or the Ishak. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant, that's just the way the Russian tech tree works. Then at level 3 you get the Lag 335. Now the Lag 335 is by no means a great aircraft, but it's one of the first aircraft in the game to get 20mm cannons. And at level 3 there's barely anything to take on something with 20mm cannons. I think there's one other aircraft that has 20mm cannons, but I can't quite remember. But yeah, the Lag 3 has those 20mm cannons, and it can destroy most other aircraft at its rank. I've put this to a test again, so it's a very powerful aircraft. And then when you get to rank 8, you get a Yak 9T, and everyone who's played this game and is ranked up a little bit knows what a Yak 9T is. And it is just a very, very good aircraft. There's barely any flaws to using it. I don't think there's any flaws to using it. And the Yak 9T, it's the thing that makes it powerful is it maneuvers and it maneuvers very well, like a dogfighter aircraft should. However, it also has high speed, high maneuverability, and it also has a 37mm cannon based in the nose, so it's very accurate, and that type of cannon is very powerful. You can take out aircraft in one hit if you're accurate enough. And also, it's the fire rate of the Yak 9T's 37mm that puts a lot of people off it. Like the Aero Cobra, which people complain about being overpowered, well, the Aero Cobra fires like one shot, it's like doof, 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 doof. So it's not a spray of bullets, it's one bullet like every second. Whereas the Yak 9T can pull out about 4 a second. So it's like, it's very, very fast. And I mean, Gaijin have tried to balance this by adding like a overheat system. So if you fire too many shots on the Yak 9T too quickly, you overheat the gun. But for the most part, it is very powerful, and it's only rank 8. There's not much to compete with it at rank 8. I think the best thing Gaijin can do probably to balance how the Yak 9T is probably put it up to like rank 10. That would probably balance it a lot better and bring down the Yak 3 to rank 8. I think that would work quite well. But that's pretty much everything. You know, the thing with the Russian tech tree is they've got a lot of aircraft that are good, and a lot of these aircraft are out of place. They're in areas they shouldn't be. I mean, the Shiker, which again you're seeing on screen now, it may be a biplane. That there's no way around that. But it's a rank 1 biplane that can take on rank 8 aircraft. It just should not be a rank 1 aircraft. It's just too good to be a rank 1 aircraft. I can use this aircraft in so many ranks, and I'm not saying I'm just a Shiker master. It's just I've used the Shiker enough that I know how to use it. But even when I first got it, I've never actually, since I bought it, I've never taken it out of its slot. It's always been there. I've now got an expert crew on it, and I've fully leveled up the Shiker. It's just a very, very good aircraft, and I can't really fault it except for the fact that it's slow and quite weak in terms of it can get killed very easily. But other than that, it's very damn good. And when it's going up against people in the rank that I'm fighting in at the moment, like rank 2 or something, that's what this aircraft is based at. I mean, look at that Gladiator. It's just spawned, and within 2 seconds it's gone. It's too powerful for its rank, and they need to dumb these aircraft down in order to. What they got to do really is add overheat systems like they did with the Yak 9T, or they need to put these aircraft at higher ranks. I know this aircraft's a biplane, but it shouldn't be able to take on these really high-ranking aircraft. It can, which is realistic. It's historically accurate. It probably could have taken on these sorts of things, but it shouldn't be able to. It shouldn't be at rank 1. It just shouldn't. And I'm not just talking about the Shiker here. I'm talking about a lot of aircraft in the Russian tech tree. They just shouldn't be at the ranks that they are. It just makes it difficult for anyone going up against them if they're not using these aircraft. They just got such a massive disadvantage. So that's pretty much my thoughts on this whole thing. Because the Shiker is just one example. The Yak 9T is another example, and the Ishak is another one. And just as an example of how they have balanced the game, there's another aircraft called the Yak 9P. It's a new aircraft to the game, came around with patch 1.31, and that aircraft, if you upgrade it a little bit, can get a 37mm cannon and a 23mm cannon. Sorry. Now that sounds very overpowered, but it's rank 14, and there are a lot of aircraft at rank 14 that can compete with that sort of thing. They don't necessarily have the same cannons, but they're stronger and they're faster, and they can do a lot more. They're a bit more maneuverable and stuff like that. So the Yak 9P is at a very good level. Gaijin made a good decision by putting it at rank 14, but the Yak 9T, it's in the wrong place. It shouldn't be there. And it's the same for the Shiker and the same for the Ishak. And I wouldn't say the Lag 335 is overpowered, but maybe bump it up to rank 4 or something. I'm not really sure. But what Gaijin have to remember is, although they want to make their game historically accurate, they should not be putting certain aircraft against other aircraft. It doesn't keep the game balanced. They have to concentrate on balance a little bit, because if a game's not balanced, it's not fun for the most part. That's just a general rule. People get annoyed if they can't play in aircraft they like, because they've got other aircraft which are just so good compared to them. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the Russian tech tree and how it should be changed. However, I do understand that Gaijin are working hard on other stuff to do with the game as well. So balancing is something they probably do after they've built most of the game. But we'll just have to see. But that's just my thoughts on the Russian tech tree at this moment in time. So yeah, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And and one last thing, actually, I will be uploading more often from today. I want to upload more videos. I just haven't been, because I haven't really had any ideas, but I've got ideas now, so I'm going to be making more videos. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Thanks for watching. I've been Mustafa. Over and out.